all of this and more with two former federal prosecutors, Glenn Kirschner and Carol Lam. Both are MSNBC legal analysts. Glenn, I'll start with you. How unusual is it that the Secret Service is served with this subpoena?
You know, it may be somewhat unusual that they're being served with a subpoena, but it's not that unusual that there is information that they have that might be relevant to something Congress is doing or something the Department of Justice is doing. And there has been, I'll call it a spotty history of full and robust compliance from the Secret Service. But let me share a quick story, Eamon, and I think it qualifies as irony because when I was a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we often came into possession of cell phones as evidence in our criminal cases. And it was not at all unusual for information to have been deleted by the owner of the cell phone before we seized it as evidence. And you know what we did with those cell phones? We didn't go down to Quantico and use the lab down there, although they have great forensic services. We went to the United States Secret Service Forensic Sciences Division to have them retrieve for us what had been deleted off of cell phones. They are extremely adept at that. So and like you, I want to chuckle at this, but of course it's so devastating that there are text messages that would have shed significant light on what was going on January 5th and 6th, particularly down in that basement with Mike Pence, who would not get in the car. He was telling the Secret Service. You can imagine that would have generated some text messages. It is really disturbing that those messages have somehow mysteriously vanished. Let me put it this way. I'll trust, but I'm going to verify. I would be doing precisely what the J6 committee would be doing, serving subpoenas, putting people under oath, getting them to testify. And now, frankly, I think this ups the ante of putting Secret Service officers under oath and putting Mike Pence under oath if there is an absence of evidence that otherwise could have illuminated what was going on.
Fair enough. Carol, as I mentioned at the top, this isn't the first time the Secret Service has been accused of hindering congressional investigations. In fact, on Friday night, I spoke with the Washington Post's Carol Leonnig, who is one of the foremost experts on the Secret Service. She literally wrote the book on the agency. Take a listen to what she said.
They have been accused in the past of destroying records to obstruct a congressional investigation. That's a long time going back now when in the 1980s, a congressional investigative team was trying to understand how much the Secret Service had been warned ahead of time about assassination attempts, including the attempt that took the life of John F. Kennedy. Critical documents were essentially destroyed weeks or days after investigators sought them.
Glenn, let me ask you about this allegation of witness tampering. If the DOJ were to take up a case like this, what would be the threshold? What would be required for them to prove actual witness tampering?
Yeah, let me first say that a call that failed to connect does not constitute witness tampering, but boy, is it an important piece of evidence that needs to be investigated. And here is the significant downside of the Department of Justice not being deeply involved in a criminal investigation right now of Donald Trump. I'm going to assume for the moment that they're not deeply involved, because if they were, you know what they would be doing? Something I did dozens of times when I had a witness who was tampered with. We would bring the witness in immediately for a recorded callback. We would sit there, we would monitor the callback, we would script it, although our script for the witness is typically you just listen and let the target say whatever they want to say, but we might suggest some follow-up questions in real time, and then you would have a recording that could be used to prove witness tampering in court. When we get that recording, we immediately put it in an affidavit in support of an arrest warrant, and we arrest the person immediately who is tampering with witnesses. We do it to incapacitate the witness, and we do it to deter others from tampering with witnesses. And it's not only an important standalone crime subject to up to 20 years in prison, it's devastating consciousness of guilt evidence. All of that should have been done at light speed once there was some suggestion that Donald Trump was calling some White House staffer, probably not for restaurant recommendations, right? So this highlights the serious downside of DOJ not being deeply involved in a criminal investigation of Donald Trump.